All right, guys, we are back with another episode of What the Shell podcast. We got an exciting one today. Hopefully, Ed's going to hop on in a few minutes. He's taking care of his kids, man, and family comes first. We were pretty excited about this podcast. We got a friend of mine who's been around in the turtle arena for a while, and we just kind of want to pick his brain, get to know who he is, provide more resources for people to reach out to and get information and see the different cool stuff he's working on. All right, so we have Mo Lofty, also known as Mo, the Turtle Whisperer. And hopefully in tonight's podcast, he can share with us why he calls himself the Turtle Whisperer. This is a pre-recorded episode. We are filming on Monday, which is right now, and you guys will be watching this on Tuesday because Tuesday is my wife's birthday. And they say happy wife is a happy life. And so I need to try to make sure that my life stays happy with my happy wife. All right. That's a tongue twister there. But regardless, happy birthday to my wife. And I hope she sees this. Maybe she watches it. Probably not. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's podcast. So without further ado, let's go ahead and add Mo to the stream. Let's go ahead and get this conversation going, man. Mo, what's going on, man?
Doing? I'm doing good, man. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you, man. We're glad to have you. So, Mo, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so I got started in turtles when I was 5 years old. My parents got me a few hatchling red-ear sliders, and it's just started from there. It just, I don't know, it just took off. You know, I just was fascinated by how they looked, and they were like... it's like living gems, basically. And, I was just fascinated from an early age. And I did as much research as I could about them, made sure that they stayed healthy and happy. And, I just kept working on them, working on improving how I take care of animals and how I take care of turtles. And, just...
No, I find it interesting, you know, when a lot of us were growing up, red-ear sliders are probably the turtle that was on the market the most. And so a lot of us find that typically our journey started with red-ear sliders or box turtles or some form of native turtle to wherever we grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York. So
Okay.
Long Island, New York, they're everywhere. Every single pond out here has sliders in it. They're just dumping grounds. You could go to a lake every week and there'd be like 10 new ones definitely released. You know, they'll swim right up to you and everything.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, man. So you start off with these red-ear sliders, and where has that journey kind of taken you to now? Like, what do you keep? What are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about basically all turtles. And it even goes past turtles into almost every species. I don't think I was not fascinated with any different species of animal, plants, fungi, all of it. I'm just really into the ecology of the planet. And I think turtles are a really good base because they live so long that, you know, if I started off and get it going now where it's seriously... like well taken care of and easy maintenance and all that, I could have them for up to 80, 90 years. I have friends who've had turtles like red-ear sliders, maps, and cooters who all have track records of them being from the 1920s. And I would, you know, they're still alive. They're still laying eggs. Like, these things are definitely at that age, and they're still doing their thing. So to me, that's an amazing thing. Like, if I could get it set up in a way where, you know, any of my descendants could, you know, see what I've done in my life, you know, with these turtles. You know, who knows who's going to be around in 90 years. And I think it's a really amazing thing to think about. It really inspires me.
What all do you currently keep?
So the basis of what I keep is mostly things I could keep outdoors because I don't want to have an accident. I'm planning on building a greenhouse, but I don't want to have an accident where the temperatures drop into the negatives, and my something malfunctions in a greenhouse or something, and then I lose my collection. So for now, I keep mostly cooters, sliders, soft shells, Florida soft shells, and the one tropical species I do have is Batagur borneensis, the giant painted river terrapins.
Okay. So tell me about your collection of cooters, man.
So yeah, I have I believe 6 different species, or 5. I'm not sure, but yeah, I have the Rio Grandes, the one with the really intricate, colorful patterns. I have Peninsula cooters, the ones that are found in mainland Florida, where you're at. And then the river cooters are my big one because there's a really cool story. I was at Chinatown, and I had just gotten out of turtles, but you know how long that usually lasts. And I found a bunch of turtles in a bin, and these things look. I found 4 cooters in there, and they all looked like they were fresh out of a lake or something. They were clawing to get out. They were really active. And typically when I go to Chinatown, I just sort of look, because most of the time they're well beyond the point of saving. But these ones look like they were very hopeful. So I took them in. I took all 4 of them in. It was 3 females and a male. And immediately they started laying eggs. Within a week, I started noticing that there was movement in the ground, and I dug them out. There they were. I think I hatched 40 of them in the first year.
Okay.
And yeah, out of those 40, I actually hatched albinos. So I decided to keep all the hatchlings.
So let me get this straight. You bought 4 turtles from Chinatown.
Yeah.
Okay. How much did you pay for these turtles, man?
It was a lot, because it was like $10 a pound.
And they were pretty hefty cooters, I assume.
Yeah, they're adult size. A few of them were like 5 or 6 pounds each. So I spent somewhere in the range of $300
on 4 turtles.
Yeah,
which isn't terrible, man. Honestly,
not at all.
And you hatched albino cooters.
River cooter. Yeah. So from that, I made like I hatched out animals worth like $5,000 out of these. Okay. Just regular turtle soup kind of turtles, and yeah, it was an amazing thing. I guess it was like a karma for saving them, because they would have just ended up feeding someone.
No, yeah. Tell me about that. How did you go from the China market to hatching albino river cooters? You mentioned that you kept all the hatchlings. So, like, what was your thinking? How did you operate?
So the way I thought about was the ones that laid the eggs were 100% hets, which means they carried the albino gene and they mated with someone else.
Did you know exactly which females laid which eggs?
Yes. I have cameras on my ponds, so I knew which ones laid what. And yeah, so I knew which ones were het. And the thing is, if something has to be 100% het to carry that, to produce albinos. So
does that mean off rip the male was het?
No, it just means that the female was het. To prove the what I knew for sure was that the female was het. I still did not prove out the male because I don't know the history. They just showed up in a bucket and I picked them out, and there happened to be one male in there. They did not lay for me this year. Well, only one of them laid for me this year, and she did also prove out as well. And
was it a different one from the one that proved the first time?
Yeah. So they all laid. Only one proved out last year. And then this year, only one laid, and then that one proved out. So I don't know how that worked, but I believe that she mated with a non-het male, or maybe there was like something going on that I don't know yet. But the way I'm going to prove out the males is I'm going to breed them to the albinos and then see if they make albinos. And that would tell me for sure. And then I could build a group that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you bred them and you didn't know they were albino, you thought they were just soup turtles.
Yeah.
What did you incubate the hatchlings for?
All females. I don't know. I just, the room I was keeping the eggs in was like 84 at the lowest and 88 at the highest. And it looks like I have 100% females, which is something I'm glad for, because what would happen is all the offspring, if all the offspring were male, it would just take one like really horny male, I guess, to screw up any kind of project I would try with them. But if I have all females and then I make a bunch of 100% het males, so like when I breed that albino, I'm going to make all her eggs males. So that being, I now have a definite 100%
hatchlings.
Yeah. So that way I know for sure what is het and then what could possibly be het. And then I could easily prove out the females, because then, whoever they mate with, it's going to be with a het albino. So I guess I really lucked out that way. And then this year I made sure they were all females to continue that. And that's really how you want to.
So let me ask you this. If you take the 100% hets that you eventually produce and you made it back with ones that are possible hets and you don't get albino, that means those possible hets aren't proven?
Well, what happens is sometimes they just don't prove out. You're really just playing with the odds.
Okay.
So if you have 100% het male breeding with 100% het female, you have a 25% shot at getting an albino. That doesn't mean it's always going to happen, though. I've heard of cases where it took up to 3 or 4 years to prove out a female that actually was het.
Right, because you also got to deal with eggs that might not be fertile. That could have been the genetics for the albino for that clutch, or
exactly,
and things of that nature. No, that's interesting, man. So it sounds like the big brunt of your project is with river cooters, specifically. Do you have any morphs of the other cooter species?
Yes, I have charcoal or axanthic peninsula cooters. They are just jet black with white stripes. So there's zero yellow on them or any of that. It's really cool, actually. They are actually my friendliest turtles. They will come up to me. If I hold them up, they'll just act like they're basking, like full sprawl out. They don't care if I like touch them or like pat their feet or anything. Yeah.
And how does that differ between the river cooters?
As far as what, their temperament?
Yeah.
The river cooters are just more flighty. I have a feeling it's just because of the previous generation was probably wild or farmed, so they weren't really interacted with, and then that actually carries on. Like if you ever like I remember in the snake hobby when I was looking into that, a lot of people who bred ball pythons would say if you have a really aggressive ball python, it sometimes carries over into the offspring. So the hypothesizing that maybe behavior is also transmitted through into the babies. And being charcoal river cooters are many generations out of the wild or farm type situations, I think that has a lot to do with it.
No, it's interesting you say that, because at one time, me and Dan the Guppy Man were having a conversation. Well, he's Dan the Turtle Man now. Mm-hmm. Dan the Turtle Man, we were having a conversation, when we were first kind of getting into our kind of zone, our lanes of preference for terrapins.
Hold on, you're breaking up a bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
We were kind of talking about the possibility of breeding the nicest terrapins we could find to the nicest terrapins. And we're not talking about, their looks. We're talking about their personalities and seeing if that temperament and that like amazing personality would carry on. So, I mean, we never really got to that point, but it would be interesting to kind of check.
Yeah, I think it definitely can carry on. They did that with a Russian scientist actually did that with foxes. His name escapes me, but there's a Russian scientist who took a group of fur foxes And these foxes live in cages their whole life. They're bred for strictly fur. So he took a few hundred of them and just selected for the friendliest ones. And there's actually a breed of fox today. It only took like 20 years to accomplish this. I think it's Makovsky's foxes, if I'm not mistaken. But they're friendly. They're dog-tame foxes, which would be considered a wild animal, but they act like dogs.
Interesting.
So,
I'll have to look
yeah.
into that, man.
Now, obviously, turtles are a lot longer lived than foxes, but I think you could replicate the very same experiment with turtles, or honestly anything, and it'll prove out.
No, so you said you had 40 river cooters your first year, and you kept all of them. So how many turtles are you at now?
I don't know, man. It like this year I hatched out 1,200, and
Hold on. You hatched out 1,200 turtles.
Yeah. So once I found out that those were albinos, I just kept buying up every cooter I could find in the China markets and in local pet shops. So all the adults, that is.
Did any other ones prove out?
Not that I know of. Most of them didn't lay eggs yet.
Okay.
There was only one. There was only 2 that laid eggs of the newer ones, and they didn't prove out. But I got 11 adults, so it's still up in the air. But yeah, so of all those adults, hold on, no, they did lay eggs. They just didn't prove out yet. Now the thing is, I have 11 adults, and the way I feed them, they just started cranking out eggs. My average for every female was like somewhere in the range of 60, like from the lower end to the higher end. And this is just cooters. So,
and how many clutches was that? Are we talking?
Usually like 5 per female. And we have a really short nesting season, so it was pretty impressive how many times they laid.
Okay.
Yeah, I also have sliders and things like that, so that really bumped up the numbers. But my average with just the cooters was between 40 and 60 per female. Yeah, and with the red bellies too, same thing. My female Florida red belly laid 64 eggs. Yeah, so
across how many clutches?
That one laid him in 4 clutches.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, man. I'm thinking Florida red belly might be a turtle on my list. I've been about to pull the trigger a couple times on red bellies.
Dude, you can't beat them. I mean, just their color alone is enough to get you into them. But then on top of that, their personality is unmatched. They tame out so quick, just like the Diamondbacks, and yeah, you just can't really go wrong with them. They're a very popular species. They're cold hardy. My Florida softshell is outside right now. It's 28 degrees, and she's just chilling. So, yeah, you can't really go wrong with them.
Yeah, man, I was thinking about it. I had talked to Greg with Greg's Turtle Haven pretty in depth about Florida red bellies, and he said the same thing. Probably one of his go-to most personable turtles if you have the space for the adult versions, which I do have the space.
Yeah.
I guess I'm interested in. All right, so they laid all these eggs. So then what? Did you have like a giant incubator? What was kind of your day-to-day?
I just put them in my. I just put them in a closet, and I sealed off the air conditioning in that room. We have like central AC here, so once I sealed off the AC, the room stayed at like 85, 86. So it just worked out perfectly. And yeah, after hatching all those turtles, I could tell you it's a lot of work. 1,200 animals is not.
What did you keep them in? I assume you had a crap ton of stock tanks and stuff.
Yeah, I have 8 stock tanks, and they were all full. I was going through like a box of lettuce a day. Like that's like 30 heads. And I just started selling them bulk to like wholesalers and stuff. And that's really that. You know, one of the only group I did like sell locally was not locally, but to a buddy of mine was the Ruber Ventris group. Because they actually hatched out I actually hatched out the clown from that.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, I labeled every single clutch, so I knew who laid what. I knew which eggs belonged to who, and I kept them all separate. So one of my females actually dropped a super clown red belly, so I gave all those to Evan.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
yeah, he's a great dude, and I really hope those prove out and more stuff hatches with him.
I assume you gave him the ones that were possibly het.
Yeah, well, they all came from the same female, so you know, inevitably he's probably gonna hatch something. The whole thing with the morphs is it's really just a numbers game. If you just produce enough, you're eventually gonna hit something weird. Like I hatched out, I think 6 or 7 clowns. Most of them didn't make it because clowns aren't really that strong. But you know, they had deformities and whatnot. But yeah, it's just a numbers game. So if you take, let's say I kept all those hatchlings from the Florida red belly, right? All 60 of those. And then those 60 would then probably lay somewhere in the range of 60 as well. So that's what, 3,600, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, of that, you know, your chances of hatching something are pretty great.
Yeah.
Morphs usually happen at a rate of 1 every 1,000. So sometimes they're not good, sometimes they're awesome. So yeah,
So it sounds like instead your kind of plan is, hey, I'm going to start with this foundation, and I'm just going to mass produce until I can produce something cool. It doesn't seem like you're like in a hurry or looking for anything. It seems like you're kind of just, you know, enjoying your animals and seeing what they produce for you.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, I produce enough numbers with every animal that it doesn't really matter how many animals I have. It's just because like they produce so well with how I keep them. And yeah, my whole thing with the mass producing is kind of just to get them out there. I feel like they're really underrepresented in the U.S. In Asia, every single person has sliders. Every person has the cooters and whatnot. And, you know, they're even starting like populations there. Like I saw a video of like a dude getting so excited catching them in like in a river, and I think it was Vietnam. It was one of those like 2 a.m. YouTube things, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like this
YouTube
guy.
wormholes.
Yeah, YouTube wormhole, exactly. And it was like this, 50-second video of the dude like diving in after sliders, and he was in the middle of the rainforest. So, go
ahead.
But then here, like everyone hates him, and then it's like if you see a slider outside of its native range, everyone wants to kill it, and it's like kind of sucks.
I think, at least this is my experience, I don't think everybody hates sliders. I think we hate the people who purchase sliders without thinking about or knowing really or being informed about what the adult is capable of. Mm-hmm. And I'll say I'm 100% guilty of that. When I was a kid, man, I started with the red ear slider. I didn't start with a hatchling, surprisingly. I actually bought a sub-adult red ear slider female from a pet, named her Biggie, didn't know it was a female. Eventually found out she was a female using AOL dial-up internet. Man, I'm on the internet like, is my turtle a girl or boy? Yeah. Funny enough, I ended up buying a yellow belly slider, not knowing there was a difference between yellow belly sliders and red ear slider. That was a male. And about 5 years went on. They never bred because I didn't have it set up for them to do that. I didn't know that much. But I ended up finding a wildlife reserve, and they took them both in a huge pond that was gated off. A couple years later, get some more red ear sliders. I ended up actually releasing them. I was about 12, and I released them. And so there is a part of me that feels guilty that I've been a part of that. But I feel like there's a lot of people to this day that are still doing it. It's one thing to know and realize you made that mistake, and 2 turtles are not going to completely change, the Florida ecosystem. but there are still people buying red ear sliders and still releasing them and not realizing, you know, and like you said, man, it's sad.
Mhm. Yeah, Long Island is really congested. So there's a whole lot of people who like turtles, and then once they get big, there's like just a few lakes around here.
Yeah.
So they just pick one and then they dump them there. And I'm telling you, like when I used to go fishing, it would just turn into a turtle feeding, time. Like I would just use all my bait to feed them because they would just be gathering around me.
Yeah.
And you'd see.
The crazy thing is, in an area where they're not native, bro, you could literally probably scoop them all up and nobody could legally say no.
Oh no, they can't. Yeah, I tried that once, and then the DEC was called on me like immediately, and I was like, "But they're," I was telling them like, "Dude, they're sliders. Like they're not supposed to be here. They're a few hundred miles off from their native range." And we talked back and forth for a while, and he was like, "Yeah, I get it. As long as they're going to a good home and such." That there is like poaching going on here, so a lot of people get mad with that.
Yeah.
They don't like to think that their pet turtle is turning into someone's soup.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah, it like the
what species of turtles are native to where you are?
So we have a few. It's the common musk, the eastern mud, the eastern painted turtle, snapping turtles, and then that's it. And then spotted turtles and box turtles. But good luck finding a spotted and a box because they're just basically non-existent except for like the most heavily protected areas.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: you got these river cooters from, the Chinatown. Where are the river cooters native to?
They are native to like the what is it, like the Missouri area, the Missouri River, and all the way down like the Mississippi,
So
east and west.
they're getting shipped to Chinatown. It's not like they're going out with the cast net and like, let me catch some turtles to sell for food. That's kind of sad, man. That's kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: like, there's so many invasive ponds out here. Like, there's populations of Chinese soft shells, red ear sliders, river cooters, red bellies, like you name it, they're out here.
Yeah.
I even found a Florida soft shell one time. Like it's just a menagerie. Oh, and a mata mata. That was insane.
You found a mata mata in New York.
Yeah. So it was like early October. The weather started getting pretty bad. The nighttime was getting into like the high 40s. And me and a buddy of mine went to this one like really infamous dumping pond. And we always get pacu and stuff out of there and like Midas cichlids. And it has like this little like concrete stream area where it's like just concrete and a few inches of water. And we were fishing right off of that thing, and we saw like the leaves move, and we were like, "What's that?" And then I pointed out, I was like, "There's a turtle in there," and my buddy's like, "Dude, there's no turtles in there." So I jump in after it and I pull it up, and it's like this mata mata that's like maybe yay big. And it was the weirdest thing ever. But yeah,
keep it.
Oh hell yeah! I mean, I wasn't gonna release it. No,
that mata mata was not gonna make it past winter in New York.
No,
man.
It wasn't gonna make it past that week. It was getting into the 30s within a few days, and so I guess I saved it. I wish I still had it, but
that's still a manageable size mata mata too, man.
Mm-hmm.
They're also on my list, man. I'm really thinking. I haven't really talked about this much, but Florida is talking about changing the laws for diamondback terrapin ownership, and so I've been thinking, if I end up getting out of diamondback terrapins completely, because I don't see myself moving right now, I got to find some turtle species that I enjoy, and there's a couple of species that have been on my dream list. And the main thing holding me back is space, man. Like I want a mata mata, but I want to do a mata mata justice. I'm in Florida.
Hold on, you're breaking up a bit. I don't know what's.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. All right.
So I am in Florida, but I'm in North Florida, and my weather's a little bit more like Georgia. And so most of the year I could leave it outside, but I want to make sure I have a good indoor space for winter. So mata mata's on my list. A fly river turtle's on my list, and
why not?
Painted river terrapins, bro.
Why not Argentine side necks, the Hilleride.
All right. So here's the thing, man, and this might sound crazy. I'm not big on the side necks and the snake necks, man. I appreciate them. They're gorgeous, but I'm just not like. I need a turtle that like excites me, and they don't. A Matamata excites me not because of its neck, but I love the shell. I love the head and things of that nature.
Like cryptic look. It's awesome. It's like they're in full camo all the time.
For me, fly rivers excite me. Obviously, it's flippers, man. I mean, it's the closest you can feel to a sea turtle of owning a turtle, man. And then for painted river terrapins, with my love for the Diamondback terrapins and brackish water keeping, I feel like that's probably the route I'll end up going because I can still keep them in brackish water. And essentially, I just have to make sure I have an environment that's big enough to house an adult.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at like at bare minimum 1,000-gallon tank.
Yeah, for one.
Yeah. So like I have 5, and they're gonna be going into a. I didn't work out how many gallons it was, but at least it's gonna be a 12 by 5 by 6. So it's gonna be pretty deep and big and all that. The biggest thing that I've realized is.
Let me ask you this real quick. What's their growth rate like? Do they grow really quick?
Fast.
So how big are yours?
I got them maybe the size of like a, I don't know, like 4 or 5 inches at max, and now they're pushing like 7.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's if you take out the time where I didn't know how to take care of them, and before I had it dialed in, I would say all that growth happened within like 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. If you saw that video I just recently posted, they like rip saw through the lettuce. It's insane watching them eat. They'll like cookie cutter it all the way down the whole length of the lettuce. And I threw a whole mulberry branch in there just to see what would they do. And they stripped it clean within a day. They go through so much food. It's honestly surprising.
We talked about your cooters and producing 1,200 eggs, and we're talking about the growth rate on your Batigers. What is your like feeding regimen? Like, what do you feed your animals? Do you have a certain schedule? You know, what's your preference and things of that nature?
Yeah. So, what I used to work in a lot of like retail pet shops, and I would just be bored senseless, and I would just start reading labels and like what was actually in the food that I'm feeding them, you know, instead of just like this like green stick, like what actually is it? And same thing with dogs.
No shade to Repto Man.
No, I don't want to mention anything, even the little brown pellets and all that. So I kept reading all these ingredients, and I noticed a very surprising trend. All the turtle food had this thing like had basically like throwaway ingredients, like soybean hulls, which is basically like nothing. It's completely inedible. They can't get anything out of it, and it's like the main ingredients in most things. Also, like wheat middlings and things like that. So it wasn't really that nutritious. They just added a few things to make the protein contents where they need to be, and then natural flavors to eat it. But you could throw natural flavor on anything, on cardboard, and they'll eat it. And then I would also do that with dog food, and because I have the German Shepherds, and I was trying to figure out what would be the best thing to feed them, and I actually stumbled upon a cat food that is high grade. It's grain free. It's got none of the soy or any of the filler ingredients, you'd say. And I noticed immediately that the turtles took to it. As soon as I started feeding them, they were eating it more, and they were getting fuller on it faster, and I wouldn't actually have to feed them as much. And then my growth rates exploded. I'm getting, typically you're looking at like 4 to 5 inches a year on cooters, unless you live in Florida. I'm getting 8 on my albinos, and then upwards of 9 on my normals in just 1 year.
Okay.
So Yeah. I do that. It's called Blue Buffalo. I'm not sponsored, but you know, it would be nice. But yeah, it's Blue Buffalo. I use the salmon recipe because you know, it's the closest thing to their natural diet. It's got salmon, it's got some chicken in there. And then the amount of minerals in there, which I think is one of the biggest parts of why it's so successful with me, is that it has all the minerals. So it's got the calcium, magnesium, potassium, all these different things. And yeah, so like one of the biggest examples of that is I have a buddy who has snake necks, and they're mainly predatory, but they love bananas. Like they'll inhale a banana all the time. And I was telling him about it, and I think what they're doing is they're kind of adapting to not having any potassium within the turtle pellets, and they're just trying to find it, so they're eating bananas, and that's how they're getting it. But I think long term that's a very bad thing because those turtles do not eat fruit. They shouldn't eat fruit. They're, you know, that amount of carbohydrate and sugar for a predatory animal is no good.
Right.
Yeah, that's like feeding your dog sweet potato all the time. It's not going to end up
So let me
working out.
ask you this. It seems like you've done a decent amount of research. What
Yeah.
is it that are there any like things people should be aware of using the Blue Buffalo cat food? Like things you've noticed in your experience, like, hey, if you use it, be careful of this.
Yeah, so the fat content is pretty high. So typical turtle food is around 10%. They're sitting at around 18, which it is a pretty big jump. But I noticed as long as they have enough space to move around within their environment that you keep them in, they're fine. And that's
Now,
actually, yeah.
with a food with 18% fat, how often do you feed your animals though?
Once a day. I feed them once a day, and it lasts. They just don't want to eat really after that. If you when I feed Reptimen, you could feed them every 5 minutes, and they'd want to eat. You know, and they'd
So
inhale
you're
it.
saying you feed them, and even if you drop more food in there, they're not touching it.
No, I mean they obviously go for it because that's how turtles are. They're opportunistic.
But they're gonna bite it and spit it out, essentially.
Yeah, and
Because
another
that's what
great
turtles do when they're full.
Yeah. And another great thing about it is it doesn't break down like Reptimen, and it just flakes away into the water. Even if they bite it and spit it out, it just stays in its form. And then even if they bite it in half, stays in its form. And it could last like that up to 3 days in the water.
You've tested it for 3 days?
Yeah, I overfeed sometimes on accident, and you know, I'm just throwing a handful in there, and sometimes they just full from yesterday and they don't want to eat as much. So the food just sits in there, and my filtration is pretty solid. So I just leave it in there to see what would happen. And with Missouri and all that, it would just turn into like that fine powder, and they never eat it. But with this stuff, it just stays in its form, and it's like a little marshmallow whenever they want to eat it. That's
So
another.
does it, like I've noticed with this, if I overfeed and don't realize it, and I use Missouri aquatic turtle diet, is if you overfeed it, not only do the pellets stay in there, but they release this foul odor in about 5-6 hours of just sitting there, and eventually it gets worse and worse.
Yeah, and it gets real funky in there, and it's not good.
Yeah, you're like, oh crap, I overfed again.
Yeah, and now you got to do water changes and all that. Yeah, it's
so. Let me
rough.
ask you this: how does the cat food that you use specifically? Because we're not saying go out there and get kibbles and bits cat food. This is a very
this
specific
is high
design
grade. Yeah,
cat food. How does it react?
So the whole reason it's the only thing that causes smell is bacteria. So when you have things like soy hulls and wheat middlings and things like that, it reacts with a certain bacteria a lot better than you would say peas and pea protein and pea starch and kelp, which are all ingredients in there. It's even got kelp, man. Like it's good stuff. Yeah, so the bacteria that are in there, and they actually they go a step further with that, and they add the the bacteria that help break down the food within the digestive system. So it helps them break it down better, which obviously helps them grow, which helps them absorb all the nutrients and minerals they need. Now, as far as the smell goes, it really doesn't smell any worse than you would say like a mulch pile, and not like a Home Depot mulch pile, like a fresh, like, like just a wood chip pile. It's earthy. It's not something you really dislike. It's just smells like a fresh garden, really. And then I have plants and all that, and
let me ask you this, man. You ever fed the Zoom-Ed freeze-dried red shrimp?
Yeah.
Is it that bad?
No, no.
The worst smelling turtle food I've ever smelled.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, if you imagine like rotten shrimp, that's basically what's happening. They're like fermenting the shrimp within their digestive system, and that bacteria is like all over it, and then that's gonna get released into the water. So then it turns horrible. It's nowhere near that. It's not even as bad as Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. Sometimes I don't even like. My water changes have gotten less frequent because of it. Like before, when I would feed Missouri, it would be like, okay, 20 minutes later, you got to do a water change, because that, like with the amount of turtles I have, you just can't keep up.
Yeah.
But with this
what
stuff,
is your filtration system?
So it's really, for now, and this is another thing I've been looking into, a really good water purification system. Because right now everyone's doing like the canister filter or sump or things like that, which is what I do now. But I'm looking at figuring out how to get it to, I would say, reef level, where the water can stay pristine, but not just in looks, but in the chemical compounds that are in it. So like calcium levels, strontium levels, magnesium, all these things within the water are actually really important to the development of the turtle shell and color and whatnot. So, what I do for filtration right now is I have just canisters on them. Still working on designing a really a much more efficient filter system than a canister. Because even though it's good at removing solids, it's not taking it out of the water. So what's happening is it's still breaking down and everything within the water. So all the nutrients are gonna still be there, and it's still gonna react and cause issues, like high nitrates and whatnot. So what I'm working on is figuring out a way to remove the solids completely, and then being able to use those solids as something else. Like maybe I was planning on having a really large sump and introducing shrimp into there, and then having them consume that
How would
waste
you
product.
get the solids into the sump?
So there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's this thing called a solids lifting outlet. Yeah, solids lifting outlet. So it's basically just a standpipe. So the bottom is here, and then it's like lifted right off the ground. So as things go under it, it gets sucked up, and then it's got like just a little and it's at water level, and then it's got a little T connection on top. So just in case your power goes out or something like that, it doesn't drain out the whole tank and create a siphon and drain out the whole tank. So yeah, you do that, and then all the solids would collect in a settling chamber, which would basically be a slow-moving area of your filter where all the solids would have time to just gradually sink.
Yeah.
And then from there, you just add some sort of structure, I guess, on the bottom. And I'm still in like the...
Wouldn't the solids still be considered in the water system if they're in the sump, though?
Well, that would be one idea. For a solids removal, you could do... you could have that where it would be in a settling chamber, and then on the bottom of it, you'd have just a drain. So whenever you need to, you just flip a switch, all the solids get flushed out, and then no more solids within the system.
One thing that, and I'm not 100% sure on this, that this is for solids removal, but I've seen people that use like the filter socks from
Yeah, that's a really
saltwater
efficient.
system. And I usually see people use the filter socks as the water is going back into the tank. What if you used it as it's coming into the sump? So the filter sock is there, the water drains into the sump, so the solids are staying in that sock, and now it's removed from the actual filtration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that actually works really well with fish. The problem is you're
Okay.
talking about turtle-sized poop, so
You got to
can't
change
really.
that bad boy daily.
Dude, not like hourly. Like it's insane how fast they clog up. And I tried that. I have filter socks, but you have to do it towards the tail end with turtles.
Yeah.
Because you have to remove all the bigger stuff out of the way first.
Yeah.
So that way it could be more efficient. The biggest thing within the turtle hobby right now, I feel like, is the maintenance load is way too high for like regular people.
Yeah.
Like
you got to be dedicated, man. If you keep anything more than one turtle, it's a part-time job, man.
Exactly. Yeah, and no one really wants to do that. No one wants to like get off of work and then come home and then like their whole room is smelling because the turtles, filtration isn't that great. So, yeah, what I want to work on is to do something where it's the flip of a switch or even automatic, where the water just drains out where the filter drains out the solids right away.
I know what you need, bro. You need a sand filter, bro. One of those pool sand filter where you can just flip it on. It sucks everything through the sand filter. The solids get stuck in the sand, pumps it on. You turn off the pump. You do it a couple times a day or whatnot. If you got one of those, like a large sand filter hooked up to your systems, of course, piping in, that might work for you too, man.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I'm working on. I have a lot of different ideas. It's just getting them into play.
Yeah.
And testing them out. I went through a few different ideas, but the problem was I was going all off of like the sump or a canister filter design.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't efficient enough to handle that kind of load. But back to your original question, what my actual filtration is. It's really just a canister filter. And then I have a lot of aeration.
Okay.
So the biggest thing with turtles, and this ties into the odor level, is the anaerobic zones within the water. If your water becomes stagnant in any zone, it's going to like create that perfect environment to produce those bacteria, and they flourish, and then that's where your smell comes from. So what I do is I use a lot of aeration within every one of my systems.
Are you just using like air stones, or what are you using?
Yeah, I have a high-powered air stone. It runs 12 different lines, and that basically powers my entire turtle room. One key thing that I have done recently, though, is...
Are you talking about one air pump does everything?
Yeah, one air pump.
Do you have like the L valves and stuff, or?
It's like one bar, and then it splits off into 12, with a bunch of like those little nozzles on it.
Okay.
So, yeah, with those little valves, I mean. And I get I think it's like 1,000 like cubic meters per hour or something like that, or cubic feet, I mean, per hour. And one very key thing I've realized very recently, because I was getting a lot of issues with the odor just starting to come up out of nowhere, and I realized my CO2 was actually getting really high in the turtle room. So what I did was I connected the intake of the air pump outside into the just pulling like air from outside, so the CO2 wouldn't be that high.
What was causing the CO2 to be high?
So the air pump was just basically recirculating what was in the room. So as the turtles were breathing, as the bacteria was using up the oxygen to convert the nutrients in the water, that all takes a toll on the oxygen levels. And unless you have a rainforest in your house, you're not replenishing that oxygen. So, yeah, and within a house, it could be 10 times higher than outside, just from you breathing and your pets and all that. So I knew it was definitely up there because of what was happening. And as soon as I plugged it in from outside, it all switched. Even my pH, and that was actually the first indication of my pH dropping, or my CO2 levels were too high. Because what happens is the CO2 binds with the water molecules and forms carbonic acid, and my pH was never higher than 7.4, which is not really which is not typical because it comes out of the tap here at 7.7. So it would be immediately dropping, which sort of told me that my CO2 was too high. So to switch that, I just took literally a 1-inch hose, like the same kind of hose you use for your water changes, and I just drilled a hole in the wall. My mom was real happy about that, and then put the thing through the wall, and that was really it.
That's interesting, man. It's so interesting to hear how different people do things. Do you use a specific brand of canister filter or whatever you get your hands on?
Whatever I can get. The ones I really like are the ones that are pressurized, like the what are they called? Laguna. They make a really good pressurized canister filter where the pump is not inside, just pumping it out and relying on gravity to push it in. Instead, they actually have the pump in the water, and it pumps it into the filter itself. So it makes starting it up really easily. It's not like you have to get a siphon going or anything like that.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because a lot of people swear by, like Fluval FX6s and things of that nature. And I don't think they realize, when you start getting larger stock tanks or larger ponds, you can get those Laguna pressurized and it doesn't have to be Laguna. They have them all over Amazon and Walmart online sells them. But some of those pond filters are like twice as strong as Fluvals, man.
Oh yeah.
And they're like $100 and you just have to buy a pump for them and you're good to go, man.
Yeah, realistically, you could just and I did this a few times, you could turn a garbage can or a bucket into a canister filter. That's really all a canister filter is. It's just a bucket with a bunch of sponge in it, if you really break it down. It's just designed more efficiently, I guess. And so all you have to do is put a pump in your enclosures and then pump it right in, and you're set. I'm
probably going to end up trying to get one of those big pond filters for my outdoor pond so I can bring my FX6 inside. I actually have my FX6 outside, bro, which a lot of people are like, you're putting a $400 filter outside. I'm like, if I need it outside, bro, I'm going to put it outside. Like,
honestly, it's like an overpriced, bucket. It's not really like
the one
that
thing
much
I'll say
crazier.
That is pretty incredible considering for canister filters. And we're going to talk about, your typical aquarium canister filters. The FX6 does have quite the outtake. So, the water's coming out pretty strong. And I've used Marine Lands. I've used Cascades. I've used, what do they call it? API Fill Stars. I've bought pretty much every brand to see. And I'll say that's probably the one thing I like for my pond specifically. It works good because it has like the dual outflow, so I can send it in two different directions.
Yeah.
And for that flow, it does what I need. Man, like it's not my only filter on that tank, but everybody has their own.
It is really convenient. I did like it for a long while when I was in the fish hobby.
Yeah.
And but as soon as I got into turtles, it was like a half hour every 3 days where I had to just take it out, get all the gunk out of the sponge, and it was just too much.
No, for sure, man.
The Laguna that I use. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead, man.
Oh, the Laguna I have now, it just all I have to do, it has these like little like I don't know what it is, like a little thing you just pump up and down, and it scrapes the gunk right off of the sponge, and then you could just flush it out with your water changes that way. So it makes things really efficient.
You'll have to send that one my way because I'm gonna be looking to upgrade the filtration on my pond. I don't know what I'll do, man. I am interested. Before we end the podcast tonight, what do you do for lighting for your animals?
I use a 4-foot T5 fixture, and then I use a heat lamp. So I do like the combos, but I just don't think it's as efficient as using like a full enclosure length UV.
Okay.
And that's really helped my color in the beginning. Last year, I didn't really do that. I just had the spotlight, and I noticed the ones that didn't really like to bask that much were not coloring up that well. So what I do is I just have it over the whole enclosure now, and I have rest spots in my pond so that way they could just sit on there and soak up the sun, like right in that few inches of water.
Yeah.
And that's that. Yeah, that's really all I do.
No, I actually recently switched to the mercury vapor, just honestly for me being cheap right now.
It's
But
convenient,
it
just
is, bro.
makes it
It's less
easier.
plugs. When you have a lot of enclosures nearby and you're working on a certain amount of like wattage for that, circuit, it works because you're like, all right, this is 2 bulbs in one essentially. But I will agree, I typically, and I own quite a few. I own 2 48-inch light fixtures. I own a T5 and a T8, and I use the Repti Sun bulbs. But I've also found I got like a 4-foot one from Home Depot that has 2 of them, and I put a Repti Sun UVB bulb in one, and then I put the full fluorescent bulb in the other. And I think it does well because the fluorescent bulb actually helps live plants grow pretty well too.
Oh yeah, I actually use 1,000-watt LEDs on my plants.
Okay.
I do have plants in the water with a lot of my enclosures.
Yeah.
It really helps with the nitrates and ammonia to keep those levels real low. And the plants do real well under LEDs. And the combination between LEDs and T5s is actually really, really good.
Yeah.
They use it in the coral industry, and coral are as fragile as can be as far as animals go.
Yeah.
So all that stuff is really important. And yeah.
No, man, it's definitely been an interesting podcast, man. I've learned quite a bit from you. I will say, man, you gotta hold some Florida red bellies for me. Evan,
they'll be here, man.
Evan offered me some Florida northern red belly crosses.
Yeah,
and while
that
I
was from my Floridas. I didn't have a Florida red belly male at the time, so the only other red belly was northern, and they all came out looking like northerns. Like it was like some looked like complete northern, some looked like Florida. So it was pretty interesting. And
but you have a male Florida now?
No, I do. I have the golden flame morph.
Yeah.
I have a group of those, and I have 3 males currently.
So you're just gonna cross the golden flame to your female?
Yeah. It's a co-dominant gene, which is a first in turtles. Usually you have to, if you cross it out of its, if you cross it into a non-het, you're just going to get normals.
Yeah.
With these guys, you kind of just get a lower grade version of that morph. And then if you cross them back to each other, you get a, what's called a super form. Like if you look in ball pythons, they call it a super pastel. Like when they breed a pastel to a pastel, it's a super. So it's really interesting. And that's one of my next projects.
Hey man, sounds like you're busy. We had a great time tonight, man. You make sure you have a good holiday season. We're slowly getting closer and closer to Christmas, man. So hey,
thank you.
I know it's cold up there if it's cold in Florida.
Oh yeah, it's dropping down to I think 28 tonight.
Yeah,
so,
man.
Yeah, everything's hibernating right now.
This time last week it was 29 degrees in Florida, bro. That's
insane.
I was like, nah, man. And I left my terrapins outside, bro.
Terrapins can actually take the cold. A big thing with terrapins is they did a lot of crossing when they were trying to farm them in the 20s.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't factor this into like Diamondback terrapin research, but there was a lot of people on the coast who were trying to farm terrapins to meet the demand of turtle soup. And
Let honey in.
They
No, go ahead, man.
Yeah, so because of that, they ended up escaping, and then once the turtle soup industry crashed, they just released them all,
Yeah.
and it just caused a lot of intermixing. So I think there is a lot of even like northern influence in Florida and the Gulf and whatnot. They're
Hey, I've talked to some guys that are like, man, subspecies aren't real. They're diamondback terrapins, man. And others who are like, no, we need to keep the bloodlines pure.
Yeah, like I found pink ornate diamondbacks up here. Like they look like 100% like something you'd find in Florida. But people still consider that a northern, and I'm telling them like this is not a northern. This is 100% an ornate. It's even got like blushing of pink and the yellow on the keels and all that.
Yeah. Hey, man, can't make everybody happy. At the end of the day, we got to enjoy what we got, man. That's what we got to do. Hey, so at the end of our podcast, man, we provide a platform for our guests to be able to share their social media, any projects they're doing, and how people can reach out to them. So this is your time, man. How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so you could reach out to me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active at, or Facebook. My Instagram is Mo the Turtle Whisperer, and my Facebook is Mo Lotfi. And if you like, I'm always free to answer questions. Let me know. I'm also really interested in anyone who's doing any kind of research. I always love learning new things about all sorts of different aspects of the hobby. Even if it's like something in the fish keeping hobby or anything that could possibly relate, I would really enjoy that. So,
yeah, man. I hope people reach out to you. You got to send me that model Laguna filter and send me the link to the cat food you order. I'm gonna look at it because I am actually about to run out of Missouri aquatic diet in a couple weeks, so it'll be time for me to get some more food. But yeah, man, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
In touch, man. And like I said, man, have a good holiday season. And
thank you
to the viewers. We appreciate you guys for watching again. We will be back next week for our next podcast. Off the top of my head, can't remember who it is, but hey, we'll have a good time and we'll talk about some hopefully turtles and have a great show, man. So
you too, man.
Hey, you have a good evening. To the viewers, y'all have a good night, and we'll see you next week. All right, guys, this has been another episode of What the
Shell
Podcast. All right, man. Good night.
See you later.